when it came to striking Iran, probably more than even he was. But he didn't listen at the last moment and reversed course. Why? What does it tell us about how he handled this and what it means going forward? Let's bring in Trump biographer David K. Johnston, who has studied the president's mindset very closely. Welcome back to Primetime, Big Brother. I will set aside my argument that this should have been Congress's decision from the beginning, and let's talk about this process. If we accept the president's reckoning, which, by the way, I don't believe that the discussion of casualties only came up at the last second. If we accepted it as his own reckoning, it means he didn't think to ask about what the human cost would be until the last second. Surprising.
Well, Chris, I think it's actually much worse than that. Our military commanders understand proportionality. They are not going to recommend a plan that would kill 150 Iranians over a drone. They would recommend a plan to take out the radar tower that tracked the drone or the missile launcher.
So you don't think they told them 150?
If they did, it's because Donald Trump or John Bolton said, give me the most aggressive plan you can come up with. It is certainly not what our military commanders would have recommended because they are schooled in proportionality. Secondly, Donald's appalling ignorance is on full display here. He doesn't know anything about the history of the world. He has no idea that Iran is the most sophisticated country in the Middle East with a deep culture and 80 million people. He doesn't know a Sunni from a Shia. But he's made an alliance with the Saudis, who go around beheading people because they pray for a better government, who, assassinated an American journalist, Jamal Khashoggi, and is saber-rattling with the Iranians. And why did the Iranian leadership, not the Iranian people, but the Iranian leadership hate us? Well, that takes us all the way back to Eisenhower and our overthrowing a democratically elected leader, Mossadegh, and putting in the Shah, who ran a vicious secret police operation that tortured and murdered people. Of course they hate us because of that.
Well, they are the originators of death to America. I mean, the animus is clear. It's how do we deal with it? But this is a really interesting angle, which is kind of bothering me right now that I haven't talked to it with any military people. You don't think he would have been presented with a plan by military officers who are charged with considering proportionality so that it is a legal strike? They have to think about the legalities. Proportionality is part of legality. And you don't think they would have said, well, 150 seems fair?
Absolutely not. And if they did so, it's because they were asked for a plan that would result in something more than they thought was proportional. And I think the president is slandering our military commanders. We have a very good system for selecting officers to rise up through the ranks. And, I've met a lot of general officers in my lifetime. Some of them I didn't like as human beings, but I've never met a general officer of the U.S. military I didn't respect.
The idea of his reticence, which, is kind of a function of how he feels about where the win is and how he's felt about experience over the years, kind of works in favor of pacification, though, right now. Does it not? I mean, he doesn't believe there's a win in military in most of these situations.
No, I don't think he does. But remember, as a candidate, he both promised to bomb the hell out of people, as he put it, and at the same time to extract us from wars overseas. But what Donald's done here is made himself the hero of the story. It's what he always does. Oh, there would have been this terrible disaster with all these dead people, but I prevented that. He always does this. And you need to remember that Donald Trump is, in the classic Greek meaning of the word, an idiot. Someone who thinks only about himself. So
what does this inform us about going forward? We don't have an ambassador to the UN. We're trying to get a Secretary of Defense in there. We had an acting one. He's gone. There's going to be a new one. The generals, Kelly, and the other ones that he had around him, McMaster, they're gone. So what happens when they do something else?
Well, there's going to be more trouble here. The Iranians are feeling very squeezed, and they're going to be provocative because it's in their interest to be so. Not having a Secretary of Defense is very troubling. Having John Bolton, whose friends say he wakes up in the morning saying, where can I start a war somewhere, as Trump's national security advisor is very troubling. And you hit it on the head in your earlier segment with the two retired military officers. Congress needs to step in here. The sole power to prosecute war is held by Congress, and anything beyond a simple proportional retaliation for taking out that drone, which is just money, it's not human lives, in a disputed zone, needs to be dealt with by Congress, and Congress needs to have hearings. And journalists should be saying to Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell and the chairman of the Armed Services Committees, what are you doing? What is your duty? What is your responsibility here? Because it's Congress that ultimately controls these things unless they give it up to the president.
And I got to tell you, it's troubling that our allies are asking questions about the intelligence that we don't usually hear said in public. Yeah. And you have to believe that that is a reflection, if not just of the perception of working with this administration, but also of the credibility of this president and, by extension, the administration. David K. Johnston, thank you so much for the perspective, as always. All right, a big night for most of the 2020 Democratic field. They're all in South Carolina and all